You know what? Do it briefly, please. Like, it took you, 40 minutes to explain it, the other night. So, do it a little bit briefer than that.
Hey, that was partially you and Anna's fault, because you kept distracting me with random stuff.
I had a beer. I was having a good time, and we got a little tangential. But
sure.
I haven't had a beer today, so.
Even as you said, no, okay, come on, Cody, let's explain this. And then you interrupted me again with something else. It was unrelated.
I don't remember.
So anyway, quick abridged version of Wayfarers. Wayfarers.
Oh, by the way, that's our game of the week. Wayfarers of the South Tigris.
Stop interrupting me, Nate.
You just said Cody. You didn't even say the full name of the game. We haven't introduced the game yet.
Wayfarers of the South Tigris. What more do you want from me?
That's all.
How many other Wayfarers games are there?
I just want that.
Wayfarers.
You always do this, Cody. You're addicted to the search engine in BGG.
From 2022, rank 8,870, A Wayfarer's Tale. But it starts with so if you typed in Wayfarers or said Wayfarers, this should be the only game that we really know to talk about.
But here's the thing, if A Wayfarer's Tale is a game that's in your collection at home and you don't own Wayfarers of the South Tigris, if it's a game you play, you're like, hey, let's play Wayfarers tonight. Everybody knows what you're talking about, and it's not Wayfarers of the South Tigris, Cody. Respect the audience.
So Wayfarers of the South Tigris, or Wayfarers as the cool kids know to call it, the abridged version of how it works. This is an exceedingly complex set collection game, basically. Because you can get points by doing other things, but primarily your points are going to come from having a complete set of 4 different icons, and you can do that multiple times, or having a whole bunch of the same icon, and then you get even more points potentially based on the points per card. Let's say that the PCC. Can we patent that right now? Points per card, or the PPC?
Yeah, if you get the acronym right, we can patent it.
PCC. Yeah. If you want the abridged version, that's basically it. But other than that, you're collecting stuff. It's a dice placement and worker placement, but it kind of works. There's we talked about Champions of Midgard recently, where that's sort of dice placement-ish and worker placement, but really it's just a worker placement game with dice assignment. Not so with Wayfarers of the South Tigris, if you must have clarification for all you 3 people out there who have even heard of A Wayfarer's Tale and played it. Where am I going with this?
I don't know, Cody. You're starting to lose me.
I know.
I'm not sure if I should interject and try and salvage your sentence or if I should let you see if you regain your feet.
No, I got this. Unlike that, as we discussed in Champions of Midgard, it really is a hybrid blank placement game of dice placement and worker placement. You've got spots where you can put your dice and you've got spots where you can put your workers, but they each operate very uniquely from each other. And those are the magical ways that define the magical game of Wayfarers. How'd I do?
I feel like if I had been the one explaining it, probably would not have used the word magical anywhere in my description. But other than that, I think I agree.
I guess it really is kind of an ancient science game. So how about the scientificalism of Wayfarers?
I already want to jump into negatives, but I feel like we always start with positives, right? In general.
We do, but we could switch it up. We could do
let's switch
your
it up,
dislikes.
Cody, because you brought up the theme, and so let's talk about that.
Ooh, this is a negative for you?
It's a negative, man, and you might be on the other side of the fence here, but generally, I don't know. Shem Phillips games, I'm just thinking about the West Kingdom trilogy. They're generally not that, mechanically, I feel, they're just not that immersive in theme. The art is very unique and it's very consistent, and it really floods the game with its presence. And so I'm not saying that isn't there, but especially Wayfarers, when I'm playing the game, I just see a bunch of mechanisms in front of me. And I see nothing else. And maybe part of that is because there's not much character artwork. There's only one deck of cards that has characters, physical characters. And those, when you buy, you tuck them underneath something and you can't see them anymore.
Then you never see them.
There's almost no faces and people and stuff in this game. It's all just symbols and numbers and colors, basically. And so I feel like the theme does not come through at all. Now, I think the theme is kind of cool. The wayfaring, you're exploring and you're using the stars and all this kind of stuff. But the thematic ties are really, really thin, I think. And so, now listen, this is a negative because I've noticed it. It doesn't really bother me because I don't need strong theme connection necessarily in a game. The game has a very specific kind of aesthetic to it, and I like that. The theme I don't really care about, and I don't care that it doesn't really connect too much and that it doesn't immerse me too much. You know, I feel like I'm just playing mechanisms, and I think that's okay, but I worry as he starts producing more complex games, more weighty games, I worry if his games are going to start feeling more and more just like big puzzles instead of, you know, like I feel like the theme, while still not very immersive in the West Kingdom games, was more present than it was in this. What do you think?
You use the word puzzle, and that's what I was thinking, like right at the same time too. It's becoming more you're playing the puzzle as opposed to you're playing the story. And I don't know if that bothers me as much because I do love a good puzzle, but it definitely could be improved perhaps if the theme was a little bit more integrated.
Like
or,
I said,
you know,
it doesn't really
tied to what you're doing.
It doesn't really bother me too much either. But it's something I notice, and it's something that still needs to fall into the negative category because it might be something for somebody else. You know, other people, that matters a lot more. And so I feel like it's worth mentioning at least from that perspective. But it doesn't really impact how I would rate the game or how I really feel about the game. So
yeah, it's interesting. So I also put theme under dislikes, but for me this was more of a neutral thing, and I wasn't really even thinking about the disconnect from like the story with what you're doing. Is more just the actual like the setting of the game. You know, more like is this kind of an Arabic age and era, and you're kind of exploring, you know, literally, you're wayfaring, you're discovering new areas of land and sea, and that's not a turnoff for me, but it's also not necessarily like, wow, yeah, I want to play this. So,
well, but I think
in a sense that leads to a positive in that I enjoyed the game so much just for what it was.
I mean, get used to it because, I mean, the whole South Tigris trilogy obviously is going to have the same vibe to it. You know, scholars and what the other one is, inventors or whatever. So, but yeah, like I said, yeah, not a huge thing. The only other thing really that I think stuck out to me as a negative was actually the dice aspect of the game. Now,
oh, really?
Well, I like what the dice do, and I can't believe I'm saying this with Wayfarers, man. I wish they did more because... Well, just a little bit more because I like how, like, when you roll your dice, they all go into their respective columns based on what number you rolled. And then the columns they're put in, there are different attributes assigned to those dice. And those are customizable attributes that you can use with tiles and stuff to basically customize the numbers. But when you place the dice, the only thing that matters are the symbols or nothing at all. The numbers don't matter anymore. The numbers only matter for what column they get put in. And then when you actually place the dice, the numbers are completely irrelevant. That bothers me a little bit. That feels like a missed opportunity. You know, I feel like there could have been a little more just spice thrown in with, like, you know, so a little bit more like, you know, placing a 3 here is better than placing a 1 here. But I don't know. Maybe that would have made balancing it too difficult, you know? So I'm not sure. But I just kind of wish there had been something.
With so many aspects running around in the game, balancing probably was a big issue. But let me throw this at you. What if the columns were like a little bit longer? So you had like an extra row underneath so that a die could potentially have more effects. And then maybe even you have more pre-printed effects at the start. So instead of literally just having a 1 and a 6 that can do something, like maybe across the board, more of your dice can do stuff.
No, I don't know if, like, because like I said, I feel like it's the number. I just feel like there was a missed opportunity when there's a blank space and I'm like, well, I could put my 2, my 3, or my 4 there, and it really doesn't matter because they're all the same, you know? I feel like that's a missed opportunity. But like I said, in this game, all of the numbers, 1 through 6, are basically equal. And the only thing that makes certain numbers different than others is the attributes that you assign to them, basically. And so if you also make the number values, like if you make a 6 better than a 3, depending on where you put it, now the numbers aren't balanced anymore. You know? And so then that messes up your little section where you can customize the attributes assigned to them. Be like, well, obviously I want to customize 5 more because it's better than 2, you know? So if you don't put that in, then it makes all the numbers equal. and you can focus more on like your pattern building with the design aspect. So maybe it's not a good negative thing, but it was something that I was like, I feel like there could have been more here, you know?
Okay, I'll allow it.
But that's it for negatives.
Okay, I also only had one other thing, and it's just the segmented board. The
it's kind of
multi-piece
chintzy,
board.
huh?
Well, it's just every time you accidentally bump it or you go to move something on one of the boards, you knock it off a little bit. And luckily, it doesn't really break that much, but it's just kind of irritating, you know?
Listen,
I'd prefer it would just be one folded board. I know that they did that so, well, for one, probably so it fits in the box better, but two, so that you can flip the boards to different sides so you have different game styles. But I don't really care about it that much, you know?
I didn't see you pull Wayfarers out of the box, but the boxes are intentionally bigger than the West Kingdom series. So is there a space issue?
Right.
Because here's the thing also, it
it's
doesn't even have to
anyway,
be, it doesn't even have to be a foldable board. It can be like a puzzle piece thing. They can fit into each other. Tons of games have done this.
Ooh,
and you can do it so that
true.
it's not like going to get broken or damaged easily, you know? Lots of games have done this. And I don't know why they didn't, honestly. It feels a little chintzy because the board pieces aren't really touching like they are. But like you said, as soon as you like barely bump something, all of a sudden there's like this little gap in the board, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the first Catan, the first edition of Catan didn't have solid borders. The border pieces were also just hexes. And so it was just a bunch of hexes mashed together and there was no border
that's terrible.
containing everything. So it's like that. You bump something and the whole board just fractures a little bit, you know? It's the same kind of thing. And it's like, come on. It's, you know, it's 25, almost 30 years later.
Come on, Shem Phillips.
Come on, Shem Phillips. How old are you?
Sam McDonald, what are you guys doing? You're churning out good games. That's what you're doing. Because this actually is a good game. Nate, let's talk about the good stuff.
Let's talk about the good stuff. I'll hand it over to you. I'll let you start.
Okay, yeah, all right. I've already spoken of this before. It might have been in a YouTube short, actually. But in Wayfarers, as is true of basically all the other Shem Phillips games, Garphill games, particularly the West Kingdom trilogy, everything affects everything. But this just feels like it's kind of turned up to 11, where you want to do a thing? You want to do a thing, dude? You have to get a thing. But maybe you have to do the second thing in order to get the first thing, which lets you do the second thing. And so you have to go find a third thing, and there's just all these little threads. I think I described it as it's like a... If you superimposed like a criminal mastermind spiderweb board with all the red wires like tied between everything, the red string, that's basically what this game is, but where all the pins are in the board is just like action places.
It's so intricately woven. Everything in this game is so intricately woven together. And the funny, like, this is the thing, that I realized yesterday that made me laugh. Like, I wanted to get a card, just one card. I just needed one card. That's all I needed. I need that one card. Okay. I had to backtrack, and I figured like, okay, I figured everything out. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to do 4 different actions, 4 different steps, just to get this one card. And so I went through all the hullabaloo, and at the end of it, dude, I ended up getting the card in a different way, a totally different way than I was planning on getting it at the first place, because of like some side effect thing that happened, and it unlocked the card in a different way that I didn't even see coming, you know? And that is like this game summed up. It's like everything is so intricately woven together, and you have to do so much planning to get something, but there's so many different ways to do the same thing that it's like almost impossible to keep all of them in your mind at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely felt that. So it's like you finish your turn, and then on the other people's turns, you're like, okay, so you're going to do something like this. Oh no, but now I got to do, okay, so I need to do that. And then it gets back around to your turn. You're like,
you're like, I don't know what
I
I'm
don't
doing
know what
still.
to do.
The funny thing is there's quite a bit of downtime in this game, but at the same time, there's almost no downtime because your mind is always active. And if it's not, your turn will be noticeably longer.
Yeah. The gerbils in the game room don't help with that either.
Some of us can tune out.
Yeah. All right. So that's my first positive. What's yours?
Well, honestly, I think I'll start out with something that's kind of a neutral positive, which was the player interaction in the game. So one of your and my major differences is that I prefer more player interaction in a game, and also direct is fine. I like to mess with people, and I don't like other people messing with me, but I appreciate their their right to do that in a game where that's allowed. This game is kind of in the middle for me. There's more interaction than some other games like Paladins, for example. You're placing influence tokens that affect what other actions that people might do, and there's tracks that you're all moving along at the same time where you're kind of competing for little mini things. And there's a lot of different cards that everyone is allowed to, attain. So you're kind of trying to figure out what other people might want, all of this kind of stuff I like. I wish there was more player interaction, but there's enough that it's not a negative either, So that's kind of like a positive neutral thing as far as player interaction goes. How do you feel about the amount that is in this?
Yeah, I feel like there was an appropriate amount for it, with the exception of those influence tokens don't quite do
they're
what
not
they
that
could
effective,
be doing.
Right?
Yeah, you almost need less spaces so that placing an influence token, like it has more power, or just, I don't know, you can put out more, something like that.
And the thing is, so you're placing these influence tokens on cards, and the cards are aligned with worker spaces. But the cards also move. Whenever somebody buys a card, some of the cards are going to change spaces, and so the card will now be aligned with a different worker space. And so you can't even snipe a spot that's really good that you think people are going to want to go to, because if somebody buys a card, it might move to a different spot anyways,
Mm-hmm.
So you can pick a card that you think people might want, but you can't pick a card and a spot really effectively.
Yeah, I guess, it depends on if you're picking a card and it's going to slide over to this next spot because you're going to take the card in front of it.
Yeah,
so
but
there's
you don't know what
some
other people are
amount.
going to do either.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. Well, my second positive is options. I love building my own little engine, my own little puzzle, and with that can get kind of boring if the game is the same every time. So I like having options. I like having different avenues to pursue victory, and there are so many options in the game. Let's break this down. You've got different types of workers. You've got different types of workers.
Yeah, right.
So you have your workers, and in those workers, there's different colors. And so those have different places they can go and give you different benefits. And then you also have your dice, and all the dice are different, assuming you roll different dice. You don't roll 3 2s like I did my first turn, which is kind of useless.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then I re-rolled 1. I got another 2. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about that. So you got options there. You've got options on the board with all these different places you can go to put workers in the first place. I like that there's even options to get the same thing. Like, let's say you want a land card. You can use the spot that comes pre-printed on your board where you have to pay provisions, but you'll get a land card and a coin. Or you could use the printed spot that's on the main board where it's more expensive. You spend more provisions, but you have more options of cards that you can look through. So that's cool.
Or you can potentially use some card you got that gives you a worker space that lets you acquire the same thing. Because there's lots of cards in this game that create more dice worker spots for you that let you accomplish the same goals as other things.
Yeah, I don't know if there's specifically one that lets you actually get more land cards, because I don't know if I've seen a land card that gives you
the yellow cards?
Like an explore spot.
Yeah, there was. I had one last night.
Were there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. All the ones I had just let me do other stuff, so I guess I just assumed that they were a little bit different. But anyway, you got options there. You've got options for even how you want to score. So are you going to focus on getting a bunch of the same card icon so you can get a bunch of points off of that? Or are you going to try to diversify and get multiple sets? Are you going to run a game where you're focusing more on getting lots of water-based cards, so you need a lot of ship tokens? Or are you going to focus on the left side of your board, just try to get land? You need a lot of camels. I could go on and on, but there are a lot of options.
He could go on and on about camels and pigeons and boats.
Hey, you like this game. Shut up.
The next thing I wanted to mention is pretty similar. I would kind of say it almost has a sandboxy feel, you don't start the game with a clear directive on what you're trying to accomplish necessarily. And this actually messed me up a little bit when I was playing the game. But there's just endless possibilities, basically. There's so many different things you can do, and there are so many different ways to do those things. And so you have to pick something to focus on at the beginning. You can't try and juggle everything in your mind, because you will just get completely lost and you won't accomplish anything. And that's good. I like that. It's a little bit overwhelming, And this is something you mentioned when you first played this game, that you sat there on your first turn like, okay, if I want to do that, how do I do it? Oh, I can do it 3 different ways. And they all require different steps and different, And so that's kind of fun though, because it really, like, if you play this game and you enjoy it, there's also a lot of replayability in this. There's a lot of, it doesn't even have to be with the different cards that turn up in a game. It's just within the game itself, just all the different avenues, I love it. It's really well designed. But like I said, it messed me up a little bit because, you have this main track in the middle of the board, which is basically the timer. My problem was I was viewing that as kind of my main goal, like always like thinking about the requirements on that track and like, okay, that's my next goal. That's my next goal. I got to keep moving on this. Mm-hmm. But you don't get really any points from that track. Actually, you get points in very different ways, And so it's
you indirectly get points from the benefits it provides, but it's not like the farther you are on the track.
Right. There's no points towards the end or something.
Yeah, like all the West Kingdom games, like the farther up on a given attribute track you are, you're going to unlock increasingly more points. Yeah. I agree. Well said. It's a little more superficial, but I like the piece colors. They're a little bit different, a little bit more unique, perhaps. You've got they're not quite pastels. They are kind of similar to the Dune Imperium piece color set, except you don't have a green. It's more of like a sky blue.
Mm-hmm. Looks really nice.
I'm not a color person. I'm not colorblind either.
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. How about you? You kind of like those too, didn't you?
I think the blue, especially, like when I walked in and saw the pieces, I was like, "Ooh, blue looks nice." It's a color that stands out to you when you see it. You're like, "Hey, that's a cool, unique player color." Get this Champions of Midgard, primary color crap out of my face. Give me something interesting and new. The yellow also is kind of nice. To the point
where you're upset that Anna took the blue one.
I was like, "Ooh, I'll take blue." Oh, Anna already has blue. Of course she does, because it looks amazing. The yellow is fine too. Like you said, it's kind of this like muted, kind of almost toffee color, kind of like Dune. Mm-hmm. The purple's basic, but you don't see purple often as a player color, so that's unique also. So I think it's fine. In general, the aesthetic is just kind of like peaceful in a way, which is funny because the game looks so chaotic,
Yeah.
But yeah, I dig it. It's all right.
Yeah, that's me. What you got?
That's more or less it. Like the last thing I wanted to say was kind of what you said at the beginning, which is just how interconnected everything is. And I feel like we've kind of iterated and reiterated that aspect a lot. So I won't go into it much more, but it's kind of, it's the core of the game. And it's what makes the game so puzzly and so replayable. So I really appreciate that. Excellent design. Must have taken forever.
Oh, so much playtesting I bet had to go into this. So much balancing. I have 2 kind of final thoughts here. First, it fits on the table. It's a little thing, but Garphill Games, you finally succeeded. You can have a 4-player game where your board is not being pushed off the edge of the table. I like it.
Thank you, Garphill, for making the cards go horizontally from my board instead of vertically.
So yeah, that was nice. The other thing, I feel like the game is complex, but you have direction. Asterisk, your second time through the game.
Yeah, that's an important asterisk. Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, that was my second play. It was your first play, so I'll have to see what you think the second time through. But my first game, I was like, I don't know. Well, I'll take this thing. Yeah, that looks nice.
And I appreciate that about this game because you absolutely schooled me. You had twice the amount of points I had almost. I appreciate that. Like that's a game that is meant to be played again and again. Right?
It is.
You play it once, and by the end of the game, you're like, okay, now I need to play this again because now I understand what I should do, kind of,
Yeah. Well, you know where the majority of the points come from. It's those sets and then a couple other secondary spots. But
the thing is, even if you know that going into the game, which, I mean, you explained that. I knew that going into the game. It just gets still pushed to the wayside almost, because there is so much going on. And there were multiple times when I was playing the game where I was like, I don't feel like what I'm doing really matters, but because of this central thing in the board where you have all of these requirements if you want to advance on this track, that was the thing that kept driving me. and I just wasn't thinking about points. And I kind of knew it during the game, but I just didn't comprehend the game well enough to be focusing on points and trying to complete the objectives in the middle, you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of knew from the beginning I was going to lose.
Yeah. It's okay, dude. Coming in last just has to happen sometimes, you know?
It does. It's hard when most of my games are 2-player and my wife is better at games. Yeah, guys, you kind of start to get used to it, you know?